Hey everyone, I'm Mariana. This is Impression Blend, and I am back from a bit of a summer break. How are you doing? How's your summer going? Did you miss me? I thought for my first video back, since we're a bit more than halfway through the year at the moment, we should talk about the best and the worst movies of 2025. So far. I have seen 55 new releases, and I gotta be honest, as of right now, I am not very impressed with 2025 as a movie year. It hasn't been particularly terrible. There are some real gems that I do love, and I am hopeful about the second half of the year. But overall, I would say most of what I've seen so far has been either pretty bland or kind of forgettable, or just not for me. There also are some movies that I initially enjoyed, but that really didn't stick with me at all, and I ended up lowering my rating on those. So in general, out of those 55 films, I only rated 9 of them an 8 out of 10 or higher. That's where I am with movies this year, which is pretty unusual. Let me know if you're feeling the same or if you think it's just me and you've actually been loving 2025 movies. But let's get into this list. I have broken it down by categories, and we're going to start with the most underrated film of the year, which for me is Freyuka, a stunning Irish folk horror film, and I hope I didn't butcher that title too badly. I apologize. If you're a fan of folk horror, you absolutely have to watch this one. A home care worker, Shu, who is haunted by a personal tragedy, is sent to a remote village to care for an agoraphobic woman. Now, this woman is not only scared of her neighbors, but is also scared of these sinister magical entities that she believes she has a very personal history with. I don't particularly want to say anything else because as someone who went in completely blind, I definitely recommend the experience of just letting this movie take you on its emotional journey, because it definitely kept me guessing and kept me wondering what is actually going on here. But I loved the experience of it, the fantastic atmosphere, the symbolism, the paranoia, the whole idea at the center of this movie about confronting your past and the deep personal roots none of us can escape, even if we tried. That's what the title means, actually. It stands for Deep Entangled Roots. The score is amazing and very eerie. I love an eerie score. The cinematography is beautiful. It's the kind of movie where all of the individual elements really fit together to paint a memorable picture. I'm not really sure why this movie isn't talked about more or watched more. Last time I looked on Letterboxd, only 11,000 people watched it, which is very low for Letterboxd, and I know more people than that enjoy folk horror, so definitely give this one a chance.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
Also, there is a mid-credits scene that is very important to the story and to the ending, so make sure to stick around. Now, as for the most overrated movie of the year, and I know a bunch of you are going to disagree with me on this, but for me, it's The Life of Chuck. I just don't think I saw the movie that everyone else watched. It's a 3-act story about the life of its main character, Chuck Krantz, told in reverse, separated into very distinct sections. The extremely vague and broad synopsis is that this is the extraordinary story of an ordinary man who experiences the wonder of love, the heartbreak of loss, and the multitudes contained in all of us. I do not need to hear about anyone containing multitudes ever again after The Life of Chuck, because it really goes to town with that phrase. Like, I'm done with it. I went into this movie ready to love it. As a big Mike Flanagan fan, as a big Stephen King fan, as a Matthew Lillard fan. I mean, the entire cast is amazing. And I knew it was going to be pretty different from what you would expect from Flanagan adapting King, but I came out of this with the biggest "that's it" reaction, especially because of how overwhelmingly positive the early reactions to this movie were. This was very cheesy and so overly sweet that the only thing that made it watchable for me was the absolutely insane cast. I have seen the life-affirming drama with elements of magical realism done so much better, and generally, this is a genre I enjoy. I love Big Fish, I love The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and The Life of Chuck is definitely that exact type of film. But this movie was just not it. I don't like referring to art as pseudo anything, but the two things that immediately came to mind are pseudo profound and cheesy. And on top of it all, in case you somehow missed the very obvious point of the story, the movie hammers it in with the most unnecessary voiceover imaginable. I wish I loved this, but I really don't understand the hype here. If I had to pick a favorite act, I would have to go with the first one because at least it's doing something interesting. But yeah, this was a huge miss for me. And for the couple next to me in the theater who straight up slept through at least a third of this movie. All right, the biggest surprise for me was The Ugly Stepsister, which is a Norwegian horror retelling of Cinderella I didn't know I needed. As you have probably already guessed, this is told from the perspective of Cinderella's ugly stepsister, Elvira, who is willing to go as far as she has to, so basically too far, to get the attention of the prince. Retellings are usually very hit or miss for me, and I would say miss more often than hit. I prefer these things to go for more of an inspired by route, but the way The Ugly Stepsister approached the retelling using a completely different perspective and leaning into body horror was entirely unexpected, kind of unhinged, and a lot of fun. I mean, I really didn't expect this movie to go for horror as much as it did, and to flip the story on its head, and still keep it as a legitimate period piece with gorgeous costumes and production design. Are you kidding me? Really a unique film that fully commits to everything it's trying to do, even if it means going a bit too far here and there. Very much in the spirit of something the Brothers Grimm would actually write, even though this is not an adaptation of their version, but it has a lot of that darkness and violence we associate with their fairy tales. Also, the lead actress is amazing, really capturing the desperation her character needs. Basically, if you enjoy fantasy horror, if you enjoy period piece horror, if you enjoy seeing a very dark take on a familiar story, The Ugly Stepsister is a movie you cannot miss. As for the biggest disappointment, and I have to preface this by reminding you that this does not mean worst of the year. We will get there. Here, I'm talking about a movie that I was insanely hyped for. I was ready for it to be amazing, one of the best of the year, and it wasn't even close, even though it wasn't terrible. And that movie for me is Mickey 17. Unfortunately. Robert Pattinson plays Mickey Barnes, an expendable on a spaceship that's on its way to colonize a distant icy planet. His job is to be given very dangerous missions that will likely result in him dying, which he does a lot, and every time he dies, a new version of him is literally printed out. The movie is about the 17th version of him. As a huge Bong Joon-ho fan, I was ready to love this movie. I also enjoyed The Book, which had a similar vibe to The Martian, which I love. It had that joke-cracking, humanity exploring against all odds feel to it. And the movie just went so far into unsubtle sci-fi satire that it actually ended up being one of my least favorite Bong films. I do have a full review of this movie where I discuss in detail the issues I had with it, but to summarize, while I still found some things to enjoy about it, I was very disappointed by its lack of subtlety and nuance. It's the same type of over-the-top, in-your-face storytelling we saw in Okja, which is my least favorite Bong film, and it's absolutely not for me Even though I think the themes of Mickey 17, things it's criticizing, are completely valid, I don't disagree with anything the movie is trying to say about dictators, colonization, capitalism, class division, but I don't need to be yelled at about it. Gorgeous cinematography though, amazing cast. Robert Pattinson is great, even though I wish he didn't do a voice here. So much potential, so many talented people involved. I'm really sad I didn't love this, but the tone and the over-the-top nature of it all was just not for me. On that note, let's talk about a movie that made me happy, and I actually have two movies to talk about here because I couldn't pick and I didn't want to because I wanted to talk about both of them. The first one is a documentary that wasn't even on my radar until I started seeing it pop up on my Letterboxd feed, and that is Wick is Pain, the documentary about the John Wick franchise. This is basically 2 hours of never before seen footage of everything that went into making these movies, mixed in with the people behind the franchise telling the story of how they pulled these movies off. And let me tell you, it really is a miracle that these movies, first of all, got made, but also that they became the phenomenon that they are today. I am already a fan of the franchise, of course, but genuinely, this documentary made me love it even more and made me want to rewatch it immediately. I love behind the scenes documentaries like this in general, but Wick is Pain is a particularly great one. It is fascinating and so inspiring to watch all of these passionate, talented, crazy people, because you have to be at least a little crazy to push through all the challenges they had, talk about what it took to get these movies made. Hearing the perspectives of Chad Stahelski and Keanu Reeves in particular, so interesting and so inspiring. I had a huge smile on my face for most of this, just grinning the entire time I was watching it on a plane. I have no idea what people around me thought was wrong with me. It makes me happy that I was able to experience John Wick movies in theaters, to be a part of this phenomenon. I'm grateful for everyone who poured their heart and soul into these, and I'm once again reminded that we just don't deserve Keanu Reeves as a person. This documentary filled me with joy, and I want to pass this along to you. The other movie I want to talk about here is Black Bag, which made me happy for a completely different reason. The movie follows a British intelligence officer, George, who is tasked with investigating a list of potential traitors, and one of the suspects is his beloved wife. For George, this is now the ultimate test of loyalty, one where he might have to choose between his marriage and his country. I love a great classic spy thriller, and that is exactly what Steven Soderbergh made here. It's not even about the action, it's about watching this incredibly talented cast engage in suspenseful mind games and look so cool doing it. You guys know, I love my character-driven storytelling, and combining that with the spy thriller genre, starring Michael Fassbender and Cate Blanchett, Black Bag made my day. There's more to this cast, everyone's great in the movie, but those two in particular, come on. It's smart, it's tense, it's sexy, it's tightly paced, it has so much style, so much great dialogue. For me, this was just the perfect movie to relax with, and I would rewatch it in a heartbeat. I already talked about this movie in my 2025 horror and thrillers you missed video, and there is another one of those coming up soon, so stay tuned. But yeah, an old school, well-made espionage thriller that revolves around great characters. Of course, Black Bag made me happy. Now, as for the movie that fueled my nightmares, aka the scariest movie of the year, there is absolutely no competition here. It's Bring Her Back by a mile. This movie is so messed up that I've seen a good amount of people say that they don't like it because they think it goes too far. And I can't blame them. As per the synopsis, evil comes full circle. After a family tragedy, a brother and sister are introduced to their new sibling by their foster mother, only to learn that she has a terrifying secret. And when you start realizing what the secret is, things get truly chilling. This is the type of horror film that makes you want to take a shower after watching it. It is dark, it is messed up, it is a whole lot of what the fuck, and some parts of it will be burned into your memory whether you want to or not. The thing about Bring Her Back is that it combines a very strong and upsetting emotional story with very visually intense, gnarly horror and amazing practical effects. It's the perfect cinematic nightmare recipe, including amazing performances and a complicated antagonist who will make you feel all kinds of ways. And even though processing grief and trauma is arguably an overdone topic in horror at the moment, the Filippo brothers still found a way to make it feel fresh, original, and very personal. It's a particularly horrifying film to watch as a parent, so if you're a parent, be aware of that. And I do not recommend showing this to your mom. But if intense horror that pushes boundaries is what you're into, Bring Her Back is definitely that movie this year. Check out my review if you missed it. I talk about all of the ways this movie inflicts emotional damage on you. But yeah, between Bring Her Back and Talk to Me, I'm scared to even think what the Filippo brothers are going to cook up next. A movie that was an actual nightmare to watch, though, because of how bad it is undeniably The Electric State. I am actually actively annoyed that this movie exists because it is such a waste of money. This is Netflix trying to make big budget sci-fi and failing miserably. The premise is this: an orphaned teen hits the road with a mysterious robot to find her long-lost brother, teaming up with a smuggler and his wisecracking sidekick along the way. A decent premise, could have been interesting, and the movie is actually based on this beautiful illustrated dystopian novel. But wow, is this movie a soulless pile of absolute nonsense. And what makes it even worse is that supposedly this movie cost $320 million, making it the most expensive movie Netflix has ever made. This is a waste of a concept. It's a waste of a solid cast, although the terrible performances made me question if these actors are even good or if they were just lucky matching projects to their personalities before this. So many cliches, so much lazy nostalgia bait that doesn't work, so many recycled tropes. This movie tries to manipulate you emotionally and fails miserably. The only thing that isn't terrible here are the visual effects, but honestly, I don't think good visual effects are anywhere near enough of a reason to watch a movie this bad. The Electric State is an embarrassing waste of resources, and I know this sounds harsh, but it really is that terrible. I almost turned it off, and I think the only reason I didn't is because I was watching it in shock that they spent so much money on it, and this is what we got. It makes me angry that talented filmmakers are unable to bring their projects to life or have to fight for every dollar of their budget when The Electric State exists. Like, the number of mid-budget and low-budget movies that could have been made with this money. I need to move on.
I'm upset!
Speaking of a great movie that was a lot cheaper to make, let's talk about the best sequel of the year. And for me, that is easily 28 Years Later. I was cautiously optimistic about this one, and I do love Danny Boyle, so I was so happy to see that he delivered. Set 28 years after the rage virus escaped the lab into the world, the movie centers around a community of survivors who live on a small island connected to the mainland by a single causeway. When our main character leaves for the mainland on a mission, he discovers secrets, wonders, and horrors that have mutated not only the infected, but the other survivors as well. This movie is difficult to talk about without spoilers because each of its 3 acts feels like its own genre almost. And if you haven't seen it yet, I wouldn't want to spoil any of that for you. But let's just say there's a spectrum of storytelling here, and all of it is pretty great. What has now become the 28 Days franchise has always focused on stripping humanity down. The first movie explored rage, anger, and hatred, but this new one takes on life and death. What does it mean to survive? What does it take? How do we accept death? How do we treat each other with compassion in a brutal world? And what lies do we have to tell ourselves so we can keep going? I loved the way this movie approached these questions while adding more to the world building, evolving the virus and the situation. Plus, the signature editing is back, the anxiety is back. But what's also great is that the movie isn't afraid to take its time to slow down and reflect. It's interesting because 28 years later can feel peaceful and still, and then turn chaotic and hectic a minute later. It's a delicate balance of polar opposite elements, and I do understand why some people felt that the tonal shifts were too big, but I have to say the more I sat with this one, the more I loved it, and I do think it works. Cannot wait to see where they take this franchise next, because there's definitely room for some very interesting stuff. As for the most entertaining movie of the year, this has to go to my favorite blockbuster of the summer, F1. Joseph Kosinski learned the right lessons about why people loved Top Gun Maverick so much, and he turned around and said, but what if really fast cars? And it worked. A racing legend, Sonny Hayes, fictional, not real person, is convinced to come out of retirement to lead a struggling Formula One team and mentor a younger driver while chasing one more chance at glory. Here's the thing, this is simple for me. F1 is just so much fun. It's a great time. I had a blast watching it, and it doesn't even matter how much of this is realistic because, let's be honest, nobody would actually be allowed to drive like that in a real F1 race, or as in this movie, in multiple races. But who cares? It's a movie. Very few movies made me forget about the world this year and just lock in on what was happening on the screen, and F1 is one of them. It made me forget everything for 2.5 hours. It has thrills, it has heart, it makes you feel good because it's about teamwork. It has a very charismatic cast who sell every bit of their drama so well. Brad Pitt, Damson Idris, Carrie Condon, Javier Bardem, all excellent, all have amazing chemistry with each other. All of them look great. The driving itself is so exciting to watch. What's not to like? Plus, I loved the central idea of being honest with yourself and understanding what really drives you. That wasn't intentional. I don't know. I've seen some reviews of this movie saying that the only great thing about this movie are the exciting racing sequences and the human element isn't really there. I disagree. It worked for me. I'm not saying it's super profound, but I think the balance is just right and it delivers just enough to get you emotionally invested. Love this movie. Currently the runner-up to my favorite movie of the year. Speaking of which, let's be honest, if you know my taste, you knew where this was going from the very beginning. The best movie of the year for me is obviously Sinners, and I don't think anything is going to dethrone it at this point because that would take a lot. Trying to leave their troubled lives behind, twin brothers Smoke and Stack return to their hometown to start again, only to discover that an even greater evil is waiting to welcome them back. Vampires. Look, I've already gushed about it in my review, so I don't want to just sit here and rehash what I already said there. But to put it simply, this movie is everything, and I will never forget watching it on the big screen. If you were to ask me what my favorite performance of the year is, I would say it's Michael B. Jordan in Sinners. If you were to ask me what 2025 movie I would rewatch right now, I would say Sinners. If you were to ask me what movie has the best score, what movie affected me the most, what movie was my favorite theater experience of 2025, I would say Sinners. I knew this was my favorite movie of the year before the movie was over. You have great characters, you have cultures colliding, you have amazing music, you have one hell of a party, you have action and gore, it gets sexy, it gets tense, it gets bloody, it gets meaningful, and all of this is insanely cinematic. Like I said, for me, this movie is everything, and I mean it. Everyone is at the top of their game here, but particularly Michael B. Jordan and Ryan Coogler, who delivers this amazing genre-bending vampire horror drama. It's a unique movie. If I were to redo my top 10 vampire horror movies video, this film would be on that list. It's bold, it's creative, it's exhilarating, and it is easily the best film of 2025. Actually, I gotta go. I need to rewatch it right now.